Let me just let everyone know.
Sweet.
Awesome, awesome.
Is there a Twitch link to this? Or a YouTube link?
Oh, yeah. I will put them. I'll DM you them and put them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me share that.
And then I'll also put them in the chat.
Sweet. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's my pinned tweet. On Twitter.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let me go with that.
Okay. Hello, everybody. We're getting started. Just give us a few minutes. If you're in the chat, feel free to say hi. I'll introduce my guest in a moment, and then we will get started. What I'm going to do is play Chapter 1. I'm deciding on whether normal or hard mode, because I'm so overpowered at this point that, like, I'll just be cutting through enemies like butter. So
Hard mode is where the game gets most fun, man.
Yes. Especially, like, not being able to use the items. At first, I thought impossible, but it actually brings a unique challenge because you have to think outside the box. Like, when in fact there are boxes involved, because the way you can get your MP back is to break the Shinra boxes. So it's actually pretty clever design. I honestly, I was all around impressed with Remake. I really expected nothing. Because I was like, they're making one game into 3. This is only going to be Midgar. This seems like a money cash thing, like a money grab thing or something.
Right.
But wow, from the opening, I was like, wow, this is Final Fantasy VII. This is what it was always meant to be.
Yeah, and let me tell you, like, my favorite new game pluses in any games. You're gonna find this an odd choice, but my favorite two are Final Fantasy VII Remake and Ratchet and Clank Going Commando.
Nice.
Those two games are the most perfect one, where you go through the normal first ever playthrough, and every time I go back and replay either of those games, I'm like, this shit is easy. Like, I have no problem with this.
Yes.
Sorry, am I not allowed to curse?
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, alright, cool. But yeah, so I say, oh, this is easy. I don't have any problem with this. You know, I'm like going through these enemies like nothing. They're like paper bags to me at this point. But then as soon as you get to the New Game Plus, then all of a sudden, like these boss mechanics that did not matter one bit in the main game actually start to matter. You actually have to think about, what strategy am I going to use? What weapons am I going to bring to this? What material setup am I going to bring to this? You actually have to start thinking about it. And that is Final Fantasy VII at its best, right? So, I mean, to me, like, I would say maybe the biggest flaw with Final Fantasy VII, the original, is they have this amazing, intricate, really well-designed materia system. They have all these really great gameplay mechanics, and if you're even half decent at the game, you never have to use them.
Yeah.
Because the game is so easy, right?
Yeah,
that's why.
Yeah, that is and
Right.
like
That's why the best way to play the game at this point is to
also
play it modded. Yeah, where they have the mods that make it actually difficult. But in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they fixed this problem by adding the New Game Plus, and like. I'm in love with 7 Remake. Like, it was everything I could have possibly asked for, with one little exception. It was everything I could have possibly asked for. Right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I'm gonna keep that in the back of my mind because it's probably gonna come up when we talk about Zack. But
yeah, I agree. 7 is legendary. It's iconic, but Remake has really exposed the flaws of it at the same time. For instance, Aerith, I found to be entirely useless almost in OG because everybody else could do magic too. She didn't really have any, outside of the healing wind, which of course came into, like her limit break abilities. There wasn't really anything unique outside of that to me. So I was really impressed.
Yuffie has that.
Yeah. So I was really impressed with how they redid her gameplay in remake because she's first off, she's the only character who can restore her own MP using Soul Drain. So that comes in really handy in hard mode. And she has a lot of really good unique abilities. I love Sorcerer's Storm. I love Arcane Ward. They do need to fix the mechanics on it a little because it does get annoying. Like, you have to be using the character in order to get them to stay in the ward. But that's just a little minor gripe. Judgment Ray is amazing. She has a lot of good abilities. And of course she has the most MP. Cloud being second. So they just balance out the gameplay so well. But anyway, we'll get started to the actual topic. We're just Final Fantasy nerds, can't help ourselves. So this is your girl Stygian Stilettos Gamer, aka Stygian Sis. I have with me FF Wiki's Technobliterator. He pretty much wrote literally all of the FF7 wiki. So if you ever go to it and source it, you can thank him personally for that. How you doing?
Well, I wrote the current version of all rewritten pages related to Final Fantasy VII. So if you see it and it has a nicer looking layout, it looks more like an updated page, that means I rewrote it. But I don't want to take all the credit from it because I did build on the work of a lot of other people who came before me. And even with this, I have a team of translators who help me out. I have people who do all sorts of research that help me out there, but otherwise, I can take most of the credit for the FF7 pages as they exist today.
Nice. Yes, of course, it's always good to give everybody credit. So what we're going to talk about today is Final Fantasy VII character misconceptions. We've been trying to get this together for a while, but holidays and life just kind of got in the way, but we're finally getting around to it. So the characters we're going to cover are Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barret, Zack, and Yuffie. We're going to kind of go backwards a bit. With the characters, we have probably a little less to say about, and then get into the big characters like Zack and Cloud. So let's get started. Let's talk about Yuffie. So I'm actually curious to see what you think the misconceptions are around Yuffie.
Yeah, so I feel like probably the biggest misconception around Yuffie is one that I used to have, right? And that is that I used to think Yuffie was basically a copy-paste of Riku from FF10. She was a copy-paste of Realm from FF6, Aiko FF9, and I guess you could say Penelo in 12 at a stretch. But there was a time when I thought that each of these were kind of copy-paste from one another, and they didn't really have a lot of unique personality beyond that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what I've come to appreciate is just how much that is not the case. And this was partly from, for instance, like, Riku is just such a different character from Yuffie, first of all. Like, Riku's story is about being from the Al Bhed, this group that previously received a huge amount of discrimination against them. And her role in the story is basically to push back on that, and for you to see, like, no, they're demonized for basically one reason, and that is that they don't follow the orthodoxy of what the religion is. Like, and there's nothing else that they did wrong, and her whole character exists to push back against that. And there are some similarities with Yuffie, because Yuffie is from this, she's from Wutai, and obviously Wutai discriminated against in the FF7 world because of the war with Shinra.
Well, and Scarlet, essentially turns full Nazi on us
Yep.
in intermission about them. So like there's clearly that race component as well.
Right, right, absolutely. But with Yuffie, it's very different because there isn't the conflict with the party isn't the same. Because Riku has absolutely zero conflict with the party until all of a sudden Waka learns she's Albed, and now he like suddenly starts disliking her for no real reason. And it just kind of exposes that this racism is really coming from nowhere.
Yeah.
And
racism does, I mean, it's very real to life.
Oh yeah.
And then
racism comes from anywhere, of course.
And then ironically, the person who he has sworn to die to protect is also half Albed. So
Yep.
It is really interesting seeing his journey from like being this pretty bigoted character towards the Albed to then finding this brother sisterhood with Riku, because he realizes that. I mean, well, Final Fantasy X is its own subject. I could talk about that all day, but
oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah. No. So I definitely get what you mean.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And then Yuffie has a very different story from that. Because Yuffie's conflict with the party has nothing to do with her being from Wutai at all. They could not care less about her being from Wutai. No, Yuffie's main conflict is that originally she doesn't care about the party at all. She has no earthly interest in whatever their goals are. Like, she literally is only there because she wants to restore honor to Wutai. And as we learned from Crisis Core, this is not unique to her. There are several other Wutaians who have the same kind of like, they want to restore the old glory days. And I imagine some of this is somewhat based on the fact that Wutai is very much inspired by Japan. So presumably the developers will have their own experience with people who will like have some nostalgia maybe for the Imperial days from before World War II. Maybe that's where some of that comes from. But either way, like, her conflict with the party has nothing to do with her Wutai heritage whatsoever. It's entirely because she just doesn't care about
the Wutaians are the good guys, and I think even if they don't necessarily know the truth behind the Wutai war, the Wutai Shinra War or whatever they call it, I honestly don't even know what they call this war.
It's the Wutai War.
That's what they call it. I thought,
that's what we call it, yeah.
But they know that they know Shinra. If Shinra's involved, they're behind something. There's something going on. And this is a little off topic, but also related to the Wutai thing. I mentioned this to Schrodinger. I was on his podcast a year ago, and we also have to remember that the developers of this game are children of World War II. I mean, may not directly, but they come right after World War II. So, their parents lived through it. Their grandparents lived through it. Assuming they lived. I mean, I don't know their situation. Obviously, I don't want to. You get what I'm saying. I'm trying to be respectful about it. I don't know the situation, but you can really see to me, you can really see that influence here because, you have Midgar, which is basically a representation of the West, if you ask me. I mean, New York City specifically, but in general, the West, a big capitalist society run by money, essentially, with propaganda being spread all over the world against, the East, essentially, which is what Wutai represents, and pro-propaganda for themselves. I mean, you got a large white man with bleach blonde hair at like 75 running it. I mean, it's clearly Trump coded. You know what I mean? So
it's so funny. When it came out, it wasn't even like, I presume that didn't even cross their minds. But then all of a sudden it comes out now, and you're like, oh.
I don't know if it was intentional, but that specific part was intentional. But yeah, it's pretty close to home. So
right, absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so Wu-Taians are definitely the good guys, and I since you run the wiki, I want to ask you, because maybe this is a misconception of mine. I was not under the impression that Godo, is that his name? Yuffie's father? Yeah. I was not under the impression that Godo was a drunk and in jail, because he was not in jail in OG, right?
When it's done,
No.
And I don't remember but in intermission, she keeps saying that he's a drunk and he deserves to be locked up and stuff. So they say it's also changed some of her story as well.
Yeah, that part's a little interesting because also in the original, Yuffie was never part of any Wutai government. Right? That, she was literally just acting on her own. And in the original, I'll caveat that she introduces herself as I'm part of the Wutai government, I'm on a secret mission, blah, 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 blah. And I had this theory before the game came out. My theory was that she's making all of that up. And she just used that to get in contact with Avalanche. I assumed she was making that up and that was a cover story.
Yeah.
But the intermission did not confirm nor deny that. So not sure yet. But yeah, so going back to that misconception, I really believe that all these characters were just a copy paste of one another and weren't that uniquely interesting, but there's so much depth to Yuffie's story. And you'll notice, because I recently transcribed the full script of Final Fantasy VII, so I went through all the dialogue myself, and it's really interesting that you do actually notice a noticeable change in Yuffie's character after when the developers think that you'll have completed the Wutai side quest.
Yeah.
Because the Wutai side quest, entirely optional.
Entirely optional. Just like her, yeah.
And a lot of people, they'll have a sour taste in their mouths after that, so fuck Yuffie, I'm never putting Yuffie in my fight. They're never going to use her again. Right? So a lot of them won't notice that you'll see a lot of her dialogue changes to where she becomes much more warm towards the rest of the party. She becomes much more of a, just much more of a team player after that. And it really starts to shine through if you look through a lot of the dialogue, just how much more invested she is after that. And, if you weren't paying a lot of attention, you wouldn't really notice that. So I think that is the big thing about Yuffie that a lot of people miss, and I'm grateful that 7 Remake is for the most part starting to correct that.
Yeah.
Because I said after 7 Remake came out, I said the biggest shock for me, the thing I was most surprised about was how excited I was to see Yuffie after that. Because before 7 Remake came out, I would have assumed that I would not give one fuck about Yuffie.
Yeah, me too. I didn't like her in OG, so yeah, she was pretty annoying to me.
right, absolutely. Yeah, and I couldn't stand her. But after 7 Remake, and this isn't Integrate, this is after 7 Remake came out, and all the story about Wutai got more expanded. Fuck, I really want to see Wutai. I really want to learn about that and see how important it is and see what they do there. And then lo and behold, they announced the expansion pack that happened to include the one person I was most excited to see. So I was like, fuck yes. And then she did not disappoint.
My god, I honestly can't even think of right off the top of my head, I can't even think of a single criticism I have of intermission.
Yeah, and what's great about it is that in the original, her cockiness, her whole I'm the best, don't fuck with me behavior comes across extremely irritating, and really rubs people the wrong way. But in 7 Remake, now she has voice acting, now she has
facial expressions. They gave her a sympathetic story in it. Yeah, exactly, they've really expanded it.
It becomes so much more endearing.
Yeah, she still has those qualities. She's still a little bratty kid who, but in a good way. It's not right.
It's this time I'm rooting for her.
Yeah,
and I wasn't in the first. In the first, I was like, shut the fuck up, so I can move on to the next bit.
and especially with replaying, because I had never finished Crisis Core, but I did finish CCR. I knew what happened, but just having Crisis Core add more to the story, and not just that, but the Wu-Tai stuff as well, you definitely gain a lot more sympathy.
Oh yeah,
in general, because it is messed up. Like, what's going on?
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's it did wonders for all the characters, if you ask me. Remake did. So, because as we said at the beginning, as great as 7 was, it definitely had its flaws, and there is a reason that a lot of people have the wrong impression of a lot of these characters. I can't blame it all on people being naive. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to. 7 is one of those games. It really is not a game you can be passive about if you really want to understand it. You have to. You have to really be paying attention and deep dive in order to truly get the story. I mean, I'm sure there's still people who think that Sephiroth is the one that killed Aerith. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there are people who still believe that. When really, what I'm saying is it was like it's more complicated than that. But I'm just saying,
right? Right, absolutely. And I'll tell you, this game has existed for so long, and I've been playing it for so long, and I'm still learning new things about it.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm still finding things out to this day where I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Like, and it changes, a lot of my perception on it.
Something, I think my friend got this off of the wiki, in fact. I didn't realize what the gift of the goddess was until yesterday, I think, or maybe earlier today. She said that it was Zack. I was like, it's Zack. And she had went through detail about what it said, but yeah, you learn stuff. I learn new stuff all the time because you got 26 years worth of lore, and they just keep adding lore to the story, and then certain things have changed. So it is definitely not a passive experience. So you can passively play it. I'm not gonna tell anybody you have to be like an FF scholar to play it. But if you aren't paying attention, you can miss a lot, for sure.
So this is a great segue into our next character, right? So actually, when I first ever played FF7, we're talking God knows how many years ago, at least 10, 15 years ago, I don't remember. It was when it came out on PlayStation Store, on PS3, that was when I first played it. And, the first time, I was confused all the way through the story, and I ended the game thinking, oh, that was really fun, I really enjoyed it. I couldn't tell you anything about it though, right? Yeah. So when I replayed it, and the next time I replayed it was when it came out on Steam. And when that happened, I had totally forgotten the entire Zack story. I didn't remember anything about, Cloud's not actually a soldier. Cloud was actually, I didn't remember any of that. And so, all of a sudden, it was, confusing me once again. But, now I'm deeply familiar with it, and now I really understand. And, how big a role Zack plays in.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So
hey, Charles.
A big, spicy misconception about Zack that I'm seeing a lot. A lot of people are under this impression that Zack is not that important to the story of FF7.
Oh my god.
And that could not be further from the truth.
Even in OG, when you finally get the reveal and stuff and you replay the game, you see, even though Zack isn't there through 99% of it, his presence is very much felt through Cloud. Yeah, and Aerith's missing for him. And this is what I was telling somebody earlier, because I'm an LTD content creator, big cloudy, blah blah blah. Yeah. But I was telling, I don't like Clarith as in the friendship. I actually find quite endearing because they both miss Zack so much. They don't even know that they have this connection with Zack, and they miss him so much. Even though Cloud isn't actively remembering it. It's a very bittersweet connection that they have. And so when you're playing it, keeping that in mind, I mean, there's so many little things where he comes up, even when they first meet, well, I guess technically second meet, whatever. And they're running on the rooftops, and And Aerith looks at his eyes and says, eyes infused with Mako energy or something like that. And he's like, how do you know that? And she says, oh, nothing or something like that. But if you know the story, you know she's thinking of Zack when she looks at his eyes. There's so many little things like that. And then just even stuff like Cloud constantly doing those squats. They didn't make it really a thing in Playmore Remake. Hey Joey.
And it's so funny how that happened because, like, I'm pretty sure the only reason they made that a character trait in Crisis Core is because in the original FF7, that's one of, like, 3 animations he has.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't have that many animations, but there's one point where you see him squatting in the truck on the way to Midgar. And I think they just ran with that, and they're like, okay, Zack is a professional squatter.
Well, there must have been forethought to it, too, because remember... the one place where they did keep the squat thing with Cloud is in Wall Market, and that's where and that's where he does the squat challenge. So
they kept it.
Yeah,
and I know it's pretty sweet. But I mean, so with Zack, like this whole misconception about how he wasn't that important has always been really weird to me. But I feel like I understand part of where it comes from. So here's an interesting thing. Here's an interesting thing about Zack is in the original FF7, after you've completed the chapter is called Searching for the You of That Day, but that's the time when they're in Cloud and Tifa and Mideel. Tifa repairs Cloud's mind and they leave the live stream. After that moment, you can go to Nibelheim, and if you go to the mansion basement where you'd find Vincent, at any point after that, you will see a flashback of
them in the truck.
Effectively the events of Crisis Core. Like, you see the flashback of when Zack and Cloud escaped from Nibelheim right up until when Zack was killed, and it start to make a lot more sense to you after that. And a lot of people will miss this scene.
Yeah,
and the reason
I heard it was only even in the U.S. release. So do you know anything about that? I heard it was not even in the Japanese release originally.
Yeah, that does sound right. That does sound right to me. That it was only in Final Fantasy VII International. That does sound right to me, but I would have to double check that.
Yeah, I have to double check. Don't hold me on that, but that's what I was told is that the original release did not have it, but.
What's interesting is that scene wasn't supposed to be optional in development,
and it shouldn't have been.
Originally that scene was going to play right after. It was going to play right after Cloud learns who Zack was, and he remembers it. And all of a sudden, he remembers where he was during the Nibelheim events. It was going to play right after that, and that was going to be a longer, more extended scene. But for pacing purposes, they had to cut it. And then they decided, okay, well, we like the scene too much, so we're going to put it in somewhere. And then they ended up putting it in in the mansion under Nibelheim, which no one's ever going to discover.
Certainly not on the first playthrough. I mean, most people aren't going to be, that curious about it. I think.
Right.
And you know what? This is again a reason why there's so many misconceptions around these characters is because too much, and this is what they're trying to correct. Joker, yeah, I know they've been going insane ever since Cloud's mocap been screaming Cloudy rights on camera, so yeah, that's why. I'm reading the chat comments. Charles Brown. Charles said if Zack didn't protect Cloud, we wouldn't have FF7 LOL even in the OG. Exactly. The only reason Cloud is even in Midgar is because of Zack. But he's not important. Okay, whatever. But what I was going to say is too much is left in buried optional scenes. Too much of it is left in buried optional scenes. And that's something that they're changing now because it led to so many things. Like I said, this is why it's really... You're just not... If you're a casual enjoyer of this game, it's impossible without further context to understand the full story. You know what I mean? If you just play straight through the game, you're gonna miss a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I'll
And
give you a great example of this. Vincent,
yeah,
his whole character,
optional.
like I until very recently, I couldn't tell you what Vincent's deal was at all. I was just like, oh, he's just a vampire guy that they put in there for some reason. I couldn't tell you why. But, now I've actually, when I went and transcribed everything, when I started rewriting the script, I was like, oh, you know what? Like, he actually has a really interesting story about, he was one of the people who was partly responsible for creating Sephiroth, and now he has to like kill effectively his son. And then there's this whole it's called Marco Cannon Rampage is the name of the chapter in the Ultimania, but that's when they return to Midgar and then they fight Hojo above the Marco Cannon and stop him from destroying the world. Like, if you bring Vincent along for that scene, you get unique optional dialogue where he's like, oh shit, this whole time I was sleeping away in a coffin because I thought I was responsible for the worst evil in the world, but it was you.
Yeah.
And you'll get little things like that. And if you never brought Vincent in the party, which God knows I never did, because I never invested anything in him, right? If you never brought Vincent in the party, you would never see that. You would never know that happen.
And there's it's honestly, it's criminal. I mean, just the fact that Vincent is Sephiroth's no, he's not. No, it's Hojo. Sephiroth, according to the Ultimania, Sephiroth never knew, but Hojo is his real father. They say that they say that in Ultimania Omega because somebody was
said that in the game as well.
Yeah. Well, Hojo says it, but the Ultimania confirms it. Let me put it that way. And he says it right before his final battle, before he dies.
Right. And
well,
the reason
dies.
is sleeping in the coffin is because he thinks it's him.
Yeah.
He thinks he was the one who did it. Turns out he wasn't.
Again, like, oh man, it just, the fact that having Vincent in the party when you go to kill Hojo is optional is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that he's an optional character, period, but if he's in your party, if you do get him, they should have made it where he had to be there, because that's the closing of his arc. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like a side note, my theory is the three that will go against Hojo will be Cloud, Red 13, and Vincent. They were all tortured by Hojo.
I can see that. I can see them making that mandatory.
Just like I have another theory that the way we're going to find Vincent, Yuffie's going to be involved somehow, because they're going to want to tie these other games together. So like, I'm thinking Dirge Cerberus, how would they further tie it in? If Yuffie's a thief, she sees a big mansion that nobody lives in, she's gonna go in there and try to loot some stuff and probably get herself caught up in something, and then the team has to save her and they end up finding Vincent. That would be my guess. But anyway, yeah, so yeah.
So we ended up talking about Vincent, which we weren't even scoped to talk about.
I know.
There you go.
Okay, but yeah, so with Zach, and I have to say, for myself, I found Zach to be one-dimensional originally, but to be fair, we didn't know much about him, until Crisis Core. So I just thought it kind of was I knew he and Aerith were in a relationship, and he loved Aerith, but he also seemed, just kind of like a ladies' man, not necessarily running around on her, but just, it just didn't. They really, and Nojima talks about this. He said there was a lot more he wanted to add, but he just either do the time or just frankly just didn't want to ask certain people to change what they've already done. So that's why I think he was so excited to expand on Zack's story, because Nojima created Zack, so he was excited to expand on Zack's story. He didn't create the for lack of a better term, plot device. Is Zack. Aerith was always supposed to see her first love in Cloud. That plot was there. But the actual characters that Nojima created.
Yeah, originally it was going to be Sephiroth.
Yeah, it changed a few times, but that ended up being who we now know as Zack. What I really liked about Crisis Core is, there is this goofy, naive side to Zack that just like a lot of the characters seem like one thing on the surface. He seems a bit goofy and aloof on the outside, but you really get to see a lot of layers to Zack throughout the story, because what's even more tragic about Crisis Core than the fact that he's killed at the end is that Shermer killed his spirit before that, and he literally like had nothing left except Cloud and Aerith, and died trying to get back to.
Is even at the end, like even after he's been through all of that, he still remains so optimistic and and he still tries so hard to see his love again.
Yes, and I love that in his last moments. You know, I'm 23, I'm dying, I just got shot 10,000 times. I mean, that ending was brutal. A lot of people would be a little resentful as they're on their as they're taking their last breaths. Instead, he chooses to embrace Cloud and tell him to live his life. And it reminded me a lot of Advent Children at the end when Aerith and Zack were like, you know, you need to, you know, just let it go and live like, you know, and he told him he was his living legacy. He's reminding them, like, I died so that you could live. You need to not take advantage of that, you know,
so
by feeling sorry for yourself.
That's really interesting you say that. I have two things I want to say. The first one is just real quick side note.
Yeah, sure.
Is that, I cried when I played Crisis Core, and I was shocked that they managed to outdo Aerith's death scene in that. Like, and it wasn't even Zack himself passing away, because you know that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It was a bit like right after when Cloud screams to the sky, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't remember the words of the Japanese song, but it's like.
I love that song.
It's such a beautiful song. Like, but anyway, yeah, beautiful ending. So. Yeah, it's really interesting you say that Zack originally appeared one-dimensional to you, because I think the Zack of the Final Fantasy VII main cast, of all of them, I think he's the only one who you look at his design and he's exactly what you'd expect from it. Because
I agree.
Because what's really interesting is, you know, you look at Cloud's design and he's nothing like that at all. Like, Cloud comes with this confident, super hardened battle veteran,
pretty
and
boy.
Like, he presents himself as that, but he's not that at all.
At all,
and that's so interesting, right?
I agree.
You know, I'll leave Barrett to the last because that can segue into him.
Yeah.
But you know, you look at Aerith, for example. She seems like she should be the shy kind of, you know,
reserved kind of. Almost virginal Mary Soup type.
Yeah, I didn't want to say virginal. But,
well, I mean, but like they were breaking stereotypes. They made her look like this virginal Mary Sue, and in reality, she's this flirty, sassy girl who, you know.
You would think, basically, you would think of Aerith. You'd think of her as Rosa from FF4, right? I don't know if you played FF4.
I played FF4, but many years ago. I don't remember anything about it.
You would think of Aerith as Rosa, and she is Garnet, and she is not that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Or Yuna, maybe. Like because Yuna is who she presents herself to be. Except
exactly.
Except she's a little more tenacious. Like she has a lot of will. She's very determined and strong-willed, but she is very passive at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. But what makes her so interesting is you look at her and you think she's that, and she's not that at all. Tifa the same way. She's not how you'd expect her at all. Britt Baron has spoken to this and about how that's one of her favorite things about the character. Sephiroth almost, like, you know, you can somewhat say that about Sephiroth, that, you know, he looks a certain way and he kind of isn't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the man is running around wearing a leather bondage suit, telling Cloud to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness and stuff. I think he's exactly who I would expect. I mean, this fool is running around with a very phallic sword. I
mean, you can say it with Sephiroth. It's more of a. That's more of an obvious one, I guess. But,
very.
Yeah. But either way, with the rest of the main cast, you know, generally speaking, you look at their design and they're not what you'd expect. And Zack, I think, is the only real exception.
I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, so, and what I mean by one dimension, it's just, he wasn't really fleshed out. Like I said, he's barely in OG. So until we got a little bit more to his character. And yeah, I guess part of it was he was exactly what I kind of expected, just on the surface, this goofy, lovable type dude. You could even tell that in Having Children. But yeah, Crisis Core fleshed him out a lot more. I mean, again, all the characters have been fleshed out over time a lot more. Oh, okay, I'm about to die. Oh, no. Okay, sorry. I wasn't paying attention.
I've always said that in Crisis Core, that Zack is a very good version of Zidane. Mm-hmm. And Genesis is a dog shit version of Kuja.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
That's how I've always said it. Yeah, so let's talk about Barrett, and we can segue on.
Yeah, sure.
What I was saying, so the common misconception about Barrett, which thankfully has somewhat started to die after 7 remake, but the common misconception is, he's just Mr. T. Mm-hmm. Like he's just Mr. T. Plotted into
like a stereotypical black dude who,
he's the angry black man stereotype.
Yeah,
is what everyone says about him. Right.
Yeah.
But to those people, I think you're missing a very obvious point, which is Marlene. That's a huge, enormous part of his character. Mm-hmm. Is that he's a dad, and a lot of his, basically Barrett's character arc is going from him, thinking that I'm being a terrorist because it's the right thing to do. And because I really care about
the planet, when really he's just on a revenge mission, and I like that he.
So the character goes from him, basically convincing himself more than anything that he's doing this because it's in the best interest of the planet, to him starting to admit, no, it's kind of about revenge. I was screwed over. When you see what happened in North Coral, it starts to make a lot of sense.
Well, and then later in the game, he also has a monologue to himself on the highway. And I don't remember exactly where, but he basically admits the same thing. And Tifa also calls him out a bit on it at some point. Tifa's very perceptive.
Yeah, what happens is that she is the one who calls him out on it at first. And then Barrett refuses to admit it, but Tifa's able to mediate it because she can see both sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Barrett's character arc ultimately culminates in him realizing, no, what I'm fighting for is Marlene's future. Like, it's not about revenge isn't a very noble goal. And it might have sounded nice saying that I was doing it for the planet, and so therefore I could excuse all the atrocities I was committing, people who were suffering as a result of what I was doing. But ultimately he comes back to having a very noble goal at the end. So a lot of the people who say he's just this, he's literally just a Mr. T, and he's just plopped into the story, or whatever.
That's ridiculous.
There's so much depth to this character that a lot of people are missing.
Yeah, I mean, husband, father of adopted girl, eco-terrorist, planetologist, basically. I mean, he's sitting there in chapter 17 quoting planet scripture, basically, to Aerith.
Yeah. So Barrett was the first page on FF7 that I rewrote. Mm-hmm. That was the first one I rewrote. And I remember thinking, as I was rewriting it, I was thinking, I'm going to have so much fun with these games, with these pages. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking, I'm going to have so much fun because it was just so interesting to write about it and how multifaceted this character is. It really speaks to Nojima's strength as a writer to write such a complex, layered character in, and it's just such a shame to me that so many people miss that, because I showed my when I was rewriting them, I showed, like, obviously the other people from the wiki who were already FF7 fans, but I also showed a good friend of mine who basically says, oh, I don't like FF7, it's anime, anything Japanese sucks, I hate it, whatever. Yeah, and then he read what I wrote on Barrett's page, and he was like, holy shit, that's a good character. And he said, like, oh, he described him as, quote, Mr. T with the strong moral compass, which I think is a funny way to describe him. But like, yeah, it just speaks to how well written this character is, and it's a shame that a lot of people miss that. But yeah, are there any other misconceptions you have? Because I feel like I've been bringing them all up.
Oh, you find I didn't have any. Well, upon replaying, I don't remember what my first impression was of Barrett. But upon replaying it, like, it's clear to me that they were, again, breaking stereotypes with his character because, yeah, instead of being some, like, deadbeat absentee dad who didn't know anything, which was a lot of black stereotypes in the 90s and different stuff, he turned out to be, this leader, great father. It was really refreshing. I'm just speaking as a black person. It was very refreshing to see his character. Leader, great father, great friend, loyal. And yeah, he had his flaws, just like every other character. Every character had to do some growing up in the game. And then I really like his relationships with the characters now in remake, because they're a lot clearer, like with everything else in remake. You really see this him take on this big brother / fatherly role with the other characters. And I love, like, even intermission when Tifa is really sad, thinking that Cloud might have died, and he's trying to cheer her up. Like seeing him thinking about other people, even, he still is gung-ho about Avalanche, but
right.
Even though he clearly doesn't even believe it himself. He's like, oh, he's fine. Don't worry about it.
I love that you said that, and I love that you had that interpretation of him the first time, because actually Barrett, I enjoyed him since the first game. Like, I was long, like, saying, like, no, you guys don't get it. Barrett is, like, one of the best characters in this game. And at the time, everyone was, like, for the longest time, basically, it was Cloud, Sephiroth, and Aerith. Those were the only ones you were allowed to like and allowed to admit was a good character. Everyone else you have to accept is somehow bad. And I was for the longest time saying, no, there's a lot of brilliance to Barrett and there's a lot of brilliance to Tifa, and no one believed me. And people started to believe me. And for that, I want to thank the man himself, John Eric Bentley.
Oh, he is fantastic.
This role.
He destroyed this role. He murdered this
role.
role.
This fucking role, man. What a legend.
I mean, I was so, because I was really nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I was nervous how, again, just because I'm black and I know how black people tend to be portrayed and stuff. I was very nervous as to how they were going to portray this character. But they made Barrett. They made a, like, Barrett reminds me of a lot of the black men I've met in my life. Like, he feels real, and I think I can guarantee you, John Eric Bentley probably gave a lot of feedback on different stuff that they wanted him to say, and, like, kind of put his own little spice into it, because he comes, like, I'm sure he had a lot of input as to how he wanted to portray the character. So, that comes across to me, at least. Let me catch up on the comments real quick, because people are saying.
Yeah.
Well, this is my headcanon when it comes to Cloud and Aerith. I believe Zach talked about Aerith a lot to Cloud. He was carrying Cloud in 6th state. He might have, I don't know, but I mean, they don't ever show it, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's honestly nothing to say
there's
that they
nothing.
did.
Yeah, there's nothing to prove that. So
Well, there's nothing to prove that they didn't either.
Yeah, there's no proof one way or the other. So
I think that's a perfectly legit headcanon.
Yeah. So I believe that played a big role, Cloud and Aerith. I mean, regardless, Eric clearly he sees the connection between him and Zach. So either way, and then Cloud misconceptions that he's emo. Yeah, that's a big misconception. I cannot stand that one.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I pity the fool who won't save the planet. Do you have any misconceptions about Rufus the Turks? Not really, honestly. They seem pretty.
There are some. There are some. I don't think we have time for them today.
Yeah, we don't have time for them today. But the only thing I'll say is I had never knew that he dyed his hair. Wait, crap! What am I doing? Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. I'm looking at the delayed screen because I was reading comments. Let me pause this. I was looking at the comments and I was like, why am I not moving? Okay. I doubt Zach wouldn't talk about Aerith except in the most glowing terms. Yet Clyde just sighs and treats her like troublesome woman. Hi, Mishika. Mishika? Nah, sorry if I said that wrong. And hi, Roll on the Floor. Hey, Trixie. But yeah, Clouds. I don't know. He does not seem to have any familiarity with Aerith, so I would be very surprised if he actually was talking about her in detail. The only thing we actually see him say is, "Say hi to Aerith for me." But yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's all I had on Baird, really. One thing. I'm very excited for Mount Coral. That's all. I guess a side note.
Oh, same.
Very, very excited for Mount Coral. It's one of my favorite arcs of FF7. So.
Oh, same.
And you know what? When we get to Tifa, I'm going to mention arcs again because I really think they need to do an arc with Zangan this time.
Yep.
As far as Cloud, I'm sorry, with Cloud with Zack, real quick to rewind just a little bit. Another thing they need to do, because when you get back from the live stream scene, he just says this speech and says, I heard these stories from a friend, and he just leaves it at that. It's almost like you don't see him go through the realization like, oh, all this happened and my friend was murdered in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see him have that regret layer to it. And I think it would actually, had they just added that and connected his guilt about Aerith to Zack explicitly, because that is a part of it, in my opinion. I mean, first Zack dies for him, and then he wakes up and realizes that he quote unquote let his girlfriend die too, who was also his friend. I think that adds to that would be a nice way to add to further explain where his guilt ultimately that happens around the time of having children comes from. You know what I mean? So
I think I agree with that.
Yeah. And speaking of Aerith, I guess we, unless you have anything else for Barrett, we can go to her.
Yeah, let's go with Aerith.
Aerith is easily it's really strange to me. Aerith is such a polarizing character for so many people.
Needlessly polarizing.
I guess to some degree I get it because she's part of this love triangle debate. And so, they're just going to be a segment of people who hate one or the other because of that,
which is really disappointing to me.
Yeah.
But.
And I especially say to Cloudy's like, because there are legitimate reasons to have criticisms of Aerith, but this love triangle thing should not be one of them, because Cloud clearly ends up with Tifa. So I mean, there's no reason to be, I just always find that weird. But I don't really see it much.
Let me respond to that.
Yeah.
So here's how I've always taken it, and I know you and maybe some of your audience will disagree with me when it comes to the LTD, but when you're looking at the story of FF7, the whole universe, like all of the world of Final Fantasy VII, not just including the original game, Cloud and Tifa end up together. And it's very clear. It's clear to me that Nojima's effectively pushing it enough that it's that's the only real plausible way to interpret it, but not too much so as to piss off people who played the original FF7 in their safe Cloud and yeah. But when it comes to FF7, the original game, what I really love about FF7 is it's very unique amongst the Final Fantasy series in how much it pushed role-playing and how much it made you are role-playing as Cloud, and they didn't really do that much before in previous games, you know.
No.
So that's why Cloud can go on a date with Tifa. He can go on a date with Aerith. He can go on a date with Barret or Yuffie, but that's really hard. You have to like be deliberately trying to play it to end up with one of those. You have to like, you basically have to know what response is gonna manipulate it to end up that way, right? And you know, so even though there is a Highwind scene at the end where it's pretty obvious they at the very least cuddled, if not, you know,
copulated, we'll say.
Right, even though that scene happens, not every player is going to see that because it is an optional scene. So
I push back there a little bit. Not that it matters, since we're supposed to be talking about Eric. But all the thing I'll say is, yes, the dialogue in it is optional, but they still spend all night together, and most of the dialogue when they wake up is unchanged. So
absolutely.
I just wanted to say that. Either way, something romantic clearly happened. What do you think is sex? What do you think is cuddling? Whatever. But anyway, go ahead.
So this is a long way of me saying, like, you know, if you personally, as a player of FF7, if you think Cloud and Aerith make more sense in your head, if that to you is what you ship, and you know you prefer that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not gonna hate on you for that. No. Right? I'm not gonna hate on you for that whatsoever. But the way I view it very similar to how The Witcher 3 does it. Because The Witcher 3 is I'm actually not a big fan of Western RPGs, and that's one of the few I've kind of liked. But in The Witcher 3, you, the player, as Geralt, you can decide if Geralt ends up with Yennefer or if he ends up with the redhead woman who I forgot her name.
Yeah.
In the books, he ends up with Yennefer. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it might not be canon, but it's still an option for you, the player, if that's what you want.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about. The only thing I'll say is, because Nomura actually did an interview about this that recently I already knew about the interview a year ago, but
Triss, that's the name. Thank you.
Triss, okay. But he basically says, while the story, you end up with Tifa because of the story, we wanted the player to be able to decide basically who they wanted to spend more time with. So in a sense, you're absolutely, in a sense, you're right. I mean, that was the intention, to give the illusion of having a choice. The only thing I'll say is different with The Witcher is, one, you actually are having a relationship with both girls. You're not having an actual relationship with either one. During most of the game. Sure. And then no matter what you do in that first half of that disc, almost nothing is changed for after those songs. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't change who Cloud grows up with, who he joins the army to impress. You can't change who's in, you know, it's not the icicle in or Midgar incident or wherever it would happen for Aerith. It's the Nibelheim incident. I mean, like, most of the story's unchanged other than a couple of dialogue options and 2 scenes. Basically, no matter what you do. In that portion.
Sure,
that's all.
And I agree with that interpretation. Like, you know, but the reason I really love FF7 as a role-playing game and as it introducing that is you look at how many video games have come out since then and have tried to basically copy what it did. Like, FF7 was such a trendsetter, and it does not get the credit for that. You know, you look at, like, you know, the Mass Effect series, for example, and that again another example of a WRPG series that I actually did like. Like, you know, it's, you look at how the crew works in that game, and like, you know, how each of them have their own side quests, and you can go, if you complete their side quest, and you get rewarded for it in gameplay and things like that. FF7 came up with this. Like, a lot of this came from FF7. And like, you know, the fact that and again in Mass Effect, another example of, in that game it's actually much more blatant. You actually do choose who you end up with. With FF7 it's not necessarily the case. But yeah, like, so I guess this is our long way of saying that the one misconception around Aerith is that, like, that they were, I guess I don't I'm having to be careful what I say here.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We're allowed to disagree.
I do represent the wiki when I say this.
Okay.
But there are people on the wiki who have disagreed with me. We're not trying to push one faction of the ship war too hard, but I'll give my own personal opinion. Screw what the wiki thinks, right? My own personal opinion. I don't agree with the take that Aerith is Cloud's one true love. And I also don't hate you if you have that interpretation of the game.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think.
There's no reason to hate somebody over it. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I mean, you're allowed to believe whatever you want to, but
Right. I think they left enough in there for you to be able to put the pieces together of a really beautiful love story with Cloud and Aerith. And if that is that something you find really compelling, that's something you really appeal to, great. But I also don't think that I don't think it is the only interpretation of it. And I would push back on people. So I would push back both ways on both misconceptions. I would push back on people who say there's nothing there at all. To which I would say, there isn't, depending on your interpretation. And I would more strongly push back on people saying, no, that's the only interpretation, that's the only correct one. I wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah.
So now we've got the spiciest one out of the way. Let's get
what I do want to say though is yeah, there's a lot of sanitizing of her character that bothers me. I guess because I'm part of this LT.
I'm really sorry. I need to use the bathroom.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, no problem. No problem. All right, I will catch up on the comments real quick. Okay. Thank you for whoever gifted me a sub. Hey, Meza! I feel they pushed the RPG aspect of Cloud only in disc 1 of OG only to build up the shock moral of FF7, which is don't self-insert your RPG character so hard that you lose all sense of reality. Yeah, like it clear, and that's why I call it a red herring. I mean, because like I was saying, the game starts to get the same, the game ends the same, no matter what you do in LTD stuff. So yeah, they allow people to self-insert a bit in part of disc 1, which is fine, but the story is a story. You know what I mean? After all, Cloud did not collapse at the end of this one because he basically self-inserted so hard into the life of Zack, he literally rewrote history in his head. Let's see. I wonder if they...
Okay, I'm back.
Okay. I wonder if they regret doing it. The whole love triangle thing just got too messy. Well, the problem is, just like with a lot of things with this game, the problem is if you're going to introduce something that messy, you have to really stick the landing.
Yep.
And they just dropped the ball. I mean, it's clear that Cloud is in love with Tifa, but they really leave this whole thing up in the air with Aerith in a big way, and you can't you can't prove it. Oh, I'm sorry, real quick, because I'm talking to somebody in the comment, and you can't really disprove a negative. Not that you even necessarily have to, but it's like they left enough, like he said, they left enough there for people really to, in their minds, decide what they just want to believe. I mean, like I can't blame this all on people who have that interpretation, because at the end of the day, they were just like with like I said, what I was talking about with Zack. They really just dropped the ball entirely with closing that arc, so to speak, of Zack. Yeah, Cloud remembers Zack and has almost no reaction to remembering him. I mean, that's crazy. He doesn't remember, like he just says, yeah, I heard this story from a friend, and then he just moves on with his life. Never mentions Zack again. You have that one optional scene. It's just it's not a satisfying conclusion to him realizing that, oh shit, I've been acting like this dude, my best friend who died for me for 3 weeks or a month.
Yeah, and it's because it was added late in the game.
Yeah,
it was late in development. They always wanted Cloud to have a mysterious past. They just didn't know what the past was going to be. Mm-hmm. But 7 Remake, they have the opportunity to fix that.
Yeah, and they're really layering. Because even as Crisis Core Reunion comes out, we've been finding more and more stuff. So like when Eric gives him that flower and says this is a memento, that's exactly what Zach says to her when he gets her that ribbon, as an example. And then like Language of Flowers, when she's saying, so that was my day today, that's almost word for word what she says in her letter that came with the deluxe edition of Crisis Core Reunion, meaning she used to write Zach that same phrase. So yeah, they're layering it a lot more. You even see there was somebody for instance, specifically with Cloud, you even see a lot of yeah, I mean, I the Mashika, sorry, Shika. Yeah, I, while I'm inclined to agree, but at the same time, because they really didn't clear things up, explicitly, let me put it that way. They weren't explicit in clearing up what the connection was between Cloud and Eric. So it does allow people to kind of believe what they want to with it. Unfortunately, I guess for better or worse, whatever I guess it depends on your, perception of it. But anyway, sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, there was somebody who made a post, this big post on all the different mannerisms of that Cloud, even in remake, has from Zach, different ways that they stand and stuff like that. So but anyway, yeah, Eric, yeah, there's a sanitizing of her character that it bothers me, because it's like you aren't allowed to acknowledge that she has flaws without people flying off the handle. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because and then they connect it to the stuff that they say about Tifa. I'm like, but you're saying Tifa's nothing but a pair of tits. That's not a criticism of a character. That's just wrong. That's just
we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, one. I know. Yeah. But I'm saying, whereas like,
I have so much to say on that.
Mm-hmm. Like, and I think the flaws in Eric make her a more interesting character, Yeah. She even says in Traces into Past, I'm fairly certain I remember even reading, because I did the book club, of course, that she tells Tifa that she's a little selfish. I mean, I'm selfish, I don't see seeing her as who she actually is a negative thing. What bothers me is this deifying of her, and then you can't accept her for who she is, which is a heartbroken 22-year-old who sees the love of her life in this guy that she had a chance meeting with. She's finally mustering up the courage to leave Midgar because I'm not saying she knows she's gonna die, but she knows her purpose is to save the planet. And I think she's just been kind of putting it off for one reason or another. Now she's mustering up the courage to do that. She's meeting friends. I love her relationship with Eric with Tifa, because like she has a real girlfriend for the first time.
Yeah. That brings us to the next misconception about Eric, right? It's that Aerith and Tifa's friendship in Seven Remake came from absolutely nowhere. They just suddenly decided they were always going to do that. And, that they did it to appease shippers or whatever the fuck. That is simply not true. That is simply not true. Like, you can go back through FF7. Like, here's the only difference, really, that they made. Is that, Tifa still has moments where she's clearly showing jealousy toward Aerith. And in the original, it was slightly more apparent. Right?
What do you mean? Well, can you name a part? What do you mean?
Yeah, sure. So, in the original, there's the moment where they're both in the prison cell together.
Oh, I know the original. I'm saying, are you saying she's still showing jealousy in Remake?
A little bit. It's a slight amount. So, in chapter... God, was it chapter 10? It was chapter 10. Absu, when you rescue Tifa, she says, is that really all that was going on? Are you really just friends? And then there's the other moment in the chapter that follows that, chapter 11, where they're in the haunted train graveyard, and then Aerith takes his arm, and Tifa's like, "Oh, no, get the fuck out of the way."
I will say this, and this is a big thing for Cloudy. Is like this because we rant about this all the time. Cena has changed a lot of dialogue stuff. What she says in the Japanese, she actually says something along the lines of, "Why is she helping
Yeah,
us.
I saw that.
You
I
know what I
saw
mean?
that.
Meaning like we're terrorists. Who is this chick? Why is she helping? You know what I mean? Like what? Oh, are we sure that she's not like up to something? That's how the Japanese kind of comes across. The
I
English,
saw that.
obviously, they
Yeah.
make it a lot more vague. Like, is that really all that's going on? It's like, okay, like yeah, they clearly were trying to push some sort of jealousy because in the original, as you were saying, OG, that is a part where you have to choose one of them, and Tifa does show some jealousy in the sewer scene there. So,
Yeah.
and then in chapter 11, they changed what Eric said to saying mine, and people say that they changed Tifa's expression to jealousy. I've seen the difference. I honestly, the jury's out for me on that. I really just don't know. But a lot of people have said that somebody showed me the side by side comparison that they made Tifa look more jealous, and she, like made her look jealous as opposed to in the Japanese version. But honestly, I would really like to see somebody do the Japanese, like the actual Japanese game from Intergrade, so I can see what actually, So I'm hesitant to say for sure that's what's going on. But yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. I think, yeah, but like I was saying, like either it's not there or it's just massively downplayed compared to how it is in 7.0.
Oh, for sure,
But-
for sure. And
But either way, like the misconception that they weren't even friends in the original is simply not true. And I can point out like two key moments in this, which a lot of players will miss. So in Under Junon, like this is right after Cloud's agreed, oh, I need to ride the dolphin. You will see all the characters run off, and you can see Tifa and Aerith. They run off together and they start gossiping to one another, right? A lot of people will miss that. They don't even have any dialogue or anything like that. It's just they all break up. And oh look, Tifa goes off with Aerith and they start gossiping. Isn't that funny? And then there's another scene shortly after that in Costa del Sol. If you don't have either Tifa or Aerith in your party, first of all, what is wrong with you? But if you don't have them in your party, then they will both agree. Like Aerith will be like, "Hey Tifa, why don't we go have our own hot girl summer out in Costa del Sol?" Like, they both have their own hot girl summer in Costa del Sol where they find that Hojo is there, and it's really weird, right? Yeah. And there is a third one actually, which is that they, if you don't have them in your party in Cosmo Canyon, then you'll see them both at the bar together.
Yeah. So, let's see again, but this is the problem. I didn't even know about that last one. I mean, this is the problem. There's so much buried stuff. All you see as canon is them fighting over Cloud. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to miss it. So it is a misconception. I do agree, because I had the exact same misconception until basically somebody pointed this stuff out to me. But exactly, and it definitely feels more like frenemies than friends to me.
Right. Yeah. But even then, you look in, like, for example, when Aerith dies and how that affects Tifa.
She like strokes her face or something, tucks her hair back or something like that.
Yeah, she clearly was,
she runs away.
By that. It's, it's very clear that, they both were good friends and they both cared for one another a lot. And, like, the Aerith and Tifa friendship is easily my favorite thing about FF7 Remake, the writing.
Definitely.
I love how they did that.
Yeah.
And you listen to how both Britt Baron and Brianna White have talked about it, and they agree. That is their favorite thing as well. Like, yeah, so there's this big misconception that was never the case, and they just added that into 7 Remake, and some people were interestingly mad about it, which I don't understand. But
I can think of one reason why they'd be mad about it.
Well, yeah.
I'm just keeping it real with them, just giving my honest opinion about it.
Because aside, like, I wasn't so much referring to that part of the community. I was referring more to.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying.
I was referring more to the 4chan kind of people who for some reason believe that FF7 the original is like the Holy Quran to them, and any change to it whatsoever is like this level of sacrilege.
Oh yeah, yeah. I see what you mean. Mm-hmm.
They've bought into this idea that 7 Remake somehow ruined everything when they just didn't understand the original at all.
I mean, this is partly your fault for going on 4chan and looking at the comments. So
yeah, I don't touch 4chan at all. The only time I've ever seen it is people have like showing me images of it. Like, but anyway, yeah.
I do agree. I do agree that the kernels where they're just like with everything else is a lot clearer this time. And I will say, the person who got depressed over Aerith first was not Cloud. It was Tifa in On the Way to a Smile. One of the first things that happens in her chapter is they all go to Forgotten City together to basically pay their respects. And she falls to her knee. She starts thinking about Aerith and all the time she spent with like Avalanche and stuff, and then she thinks of Aerith. And there's actually a little tie-in because she hears Aerith's voice saying, "How are you holding up?" And it's almost word for word what Aerith says to Tifa in chapter 17 after she asks about Cloud. Yeah, and that's when she breaks out crying and Cloud is consoling her. Yeah, so they definitely it was not very clear to me in OG, but they definitely have leaned a lot more into it since OG, and they've gone full blown with it in Remake because it's clear how much these girls love each other already, and they also go into more detail about. I mean, the whole thing that's going on in Trace the Two Paths is these two are having a conversation about their background, and both chapters, both sides of their story start out with them saying that they've become fast friends and praising the other. So they're really leaning into it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. Do we have any other ones?
No. We can go to Tifa and Cloud, and then we can.
Okay. Well, luckily with Tifa, we've discussed a lot of them already. And most of the misconceptions around Tifa generally stem from the LTD. But here's the one that was alluded to earlier, and is the one that pisses me off the most: is that Tifa people only like her because of her boobs. Yeah. I fucking hate this criticism.
It is so stupid.
It really pisses me off.
It really shows how small-minded you have to be if you really believe that.
Also how misogynistic you are.
Yes, and what are you saying about men too? First off, it's mostly women. I mean, I wouldn't say mostly women, but I would say the majority of Tifa fans are women. And then, if not 50-50, definitely more. You know what I mean? And then, and I mean straight women specifically. There's a large population of straight women who are who love Tifa as a character. So it's clearly not about her tits. And then also, what are you saying about men too? Like, are you saying that men are so shallow and small-minded that they can't see past a pair of tits? You know what I mean? Like, so it's also insulting to the male fans to me who like Tifa. Yeah, she's hot. Obviously, all these characters are hot. I mean, that's what's so crazy about it. Is like, Name one of the main cast is ugly. You know what I mean? Right. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry. Right. Go ahead. That drives me crazy too.
So here's the response I always give to people who say that. And yeah, so my response is very similar to a line that Eminem has in one of his songs. And the line he says is, "If the only reason I blow is because I'm white, though, why doesn't every other white rapper sell what I sold?" Mm-hmm. To which I say exactly the same thing about Tifa. If the only reason that she is so popular and has such an enduring and large fan base for so long is because of her breasts, then why isn't every single busty woman in video games just as popular as she is?
Mm-hmm. In the same video game, Scarlet, for God's sake, she got the girls out the play.
Why isn't Lulu more popular than she is? Lulu's are even bigger than hers.
And frankly, Aerith. I mean, they're not as big, but obviously, but she's got a cleavage hanging out, and then like their favorite dress is the one where she's got like a push-up bra.
Aerith has a J-Lo ass on her. So why isn't Aerith loved for that? Like,
and it's like, do y'all have short memories? I mean, Aerith had. They did downsize her a little, but if you look at the ending of Crisis Core and you look at Aerith in her OG concept art, I mean, She had the cleavage out. She was stacked. I mean, curvy. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is the problem? Like, why? Like, Tifa has never had her cleavage out. Yeah, Roll on the floor said Eric was caked. Yeah. Like, like, okay, so yeah, they're bigger, but they're also completely covered up except when she does the wall market thing. So what is your point?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that does go into another misconception, which is a lot of people, this is a smaller one, but if you see a lot of cosplays of Tifa, they tend to have cleavage in her chest.
Yeah.
Tifa's outfit does not include cleavage.
It never has.
So if you perceive it like that, that's just how the cosplays are doing it, which is, I have no problem with them doing that. It's a cosplay. It's not meant, well, some people like to do one for one as matching the original character as much as possible. Some people don't like to do that. But but going back to that, you can use the Eminem example again, because Eminem hasn't denied that him being white has helped him sell a lot of albums. Like, he's said as much. He's said as much many times, and it's definitely helped his popularity. But the reason he had the popularity is because he's he
had the talent. Yeah,
really fucking talented, and that's why he was so well respected.
You didn't see Vanilla Ice's career go
exactly.
soar after that. He got lucky with one hit, and I couldn't name another for my life. I couldn't name another Vanilla Ice song.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And, Macklemore had only one album. We'll see how long Jack Harlow lasts. But, anyway, and the same thing applies with Tifa. We're not denying that her being a very physically attractive character is where a portion of her fan base comes from, or a portion of her popularity comes from.
Yeah, of course. They're not making ugly characters, so again, it's stupid. Of course.
We're not saying it comes from absolutely nowhere. We're just saying if you reduce it to that, then it's just extremely, misogynistic, first of all. Because imagine if you said that about someone in real life. Okay, I get it, Tifa's a video game character, but if you said that to any other woman in real life, people would rightfully call you misogynistic, and they'd be
absolutely. Absolutely, it speaks to your mindset as a person, because if you're thinking about that, if you're thinking this about a video game character, what the hell are you thinking about real women? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Tifa's a world class fighter. She's a business owner. She's helping save the planet. She saves the hero. But you are so shallow and small-minded you can't see past her tits. That's crazy. You need psychological help.
Yep.
Yeah, seriously.
Absolutely, yeah. So that one, so first of all, you're misogynistic if you think that. Second of all, you're just completely ignoring everything about this character under the surface. So now I'm going to get to the other misconception about Tifa, which is kind of tied into the first one, where a lot of people... And this mostly applies to people who've only played VII OG. And a lot of people say, oh, she doesn't have a huge amount of depth to her. Let me tell you, when I was writing Tifa's article, right, and to this day, not just because she's my favorite character in the series, but to this day is my proudest piece of work, because, when I was writing the personality section for it, I was struggling. Not because of how much I had to say. Sorry, not because I had so little to say. But precisely the opposite. But because I had so much to say and so few words that I had to say it in. Because I'm like, okay, I could write a book about this shit. I could write so much about what Tifa's personality is like and all the nuances and everything that makes her work. But I just can't do that in a section of a wiki article that people are gonna actually read. I can't do that. I only have 4 paragraphs. Well, I'm limiting myself to 4 paragraphs to explain everything about, all the depth of Tifa's character and everything that makes her work. And, I just didn't have a lot of space to do that. And that's because, Tifa has this really beautiful character arc about, her and Barrett were both hurt the same way. They both had their hometown burned down, destroyed because of Shinra, and they both ended up in the same place because of Shinra, and originally they are fighting for revenge. But Tifa has a little bit of a different reaction from it, where Barrett is very gung-ho on the whole, I'm going to take down Shinra and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. He's very gung-ho on that. And Tifa is very, like, you know, she's still, like, kind of, she still wants to. She still like has the fire burning in her heart, but she also recognizes, like, you know, she knows what it was like for her after everything had been gone and everything had been taken from her, and she doesn't want other little girls to end up exactly the way she did, and she's very scared that she's going to create another generation of Tifas by what she's doing.
Yeah, exactly. It makes her a very nuanced character and some salty dumbass. Really some salty dumbass. I remember some salty dumbass when they read, I don't know if it was in Ultimania or something, where it said that she was wavering on Avalanche's mission because while she was, you know, like you said, wanting revenge, she was conflicted because she was wondering if they had never done all this, would all those people in Sector 7 had died.
Right.
They called her a stupid bitch for caring that 50,000 people was dead. I'm like, no, you're the stupid bitch. Any person with a conscience is going to pause when 50,000 people are dead. The fact that you don't have a problem with that just shows you're sociopathic, in my opinion.
Right, exactly. And
because even Barrett, blinded by rage, he is taken back by the devastation too. But he more takes it as, this is a casualty of the war that we know we started. We didn't expect it to go this far, but we knew that something like this was a possibility. You know, so he kind of sees it like that.
And that right there is why she's so crucial in the party dynamic, right? Because, you know, where Tifa is a lot more like non-committal, she's very, like, you know, very non-committal about it. Yeah. Rightly so.
Which is why she's in a pinch, which is why Cloud enters the picture in the first place.
Right. And it's Barrett who's able to push her past this sometimes and say, no, we're doing the right thing here. So whenever she's on the fence, like, Barrett is always there to help her out. Likewise, she's always there as a counterbalance to Barrett whenever he wants to go in. So this is true both of 7 Remake and of 7 OG. You know, when you get to 7 OG, when you go to the Shinra building, in the original, Barrett's like, oh great, it's the Shinra building, let's go in and shoot everyone up. And she's like, yo, big man, there's like fucking a million different, like, you know, there's a huge stupid amount of security in there. Are you sure you want to go in and shoot everyone up? Did you think this through? You know, there's a staircase, like, you know, and then in 7 Remake, it's a little more obvious moments like that, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is at the very end when Kashi does, or Reeve, when he does bring up these points to Barrett about, you know, the devastation and the destruction he's caused, Tifa's the one who's able to mediate the conversation because she's the one who can see both sides of it. And she's the one who's able to get them to reconcile, you know. So I think with that, I've killed the last few misconceptions people had about her in one go, which is that she has no depth and that she isn't that important to the story. Yeah. She's, even if we're not getting into the fact that she's the one who's able to bring Cloud back, like, even if we don't get into that, she's phenomenally important to the story.
Yes, and
I know I've talked a lot. I'm really sorry.
No, you're fine.
Last one is just about, you know, a lot of people who I've seen who use the whole Mideel section to kind of hate on Tifa. They say, oh, see, but when Tifa controlled the party, when she was the party leader, the only thing she could think of was Cloud. So clearly she has no personality. To which I would say, none of them could think of what to do there.
Yes, like, he was the leader, and she's in love with him. What is she supposed to? She thinks she's lost him again. He just helped Sephiroth. He just essentially helps. She just found out that he wasn't really a soldier, and he just essentially he essentially helped Sephiroth destroy the planet. I mean, and then he disappeared. Like, yeah, she's thinking about
None of them knew what to do. she was no exception. She was the only one who took up the mantle of leadership and said, look, I mean, we're kind of stuck, so we gotta find Cloud. Because that was all.
Well, and she was the only one that believed that, I mean, even though she couldn't, you know, she was having this moment where, like, she couldn't reconcile what Sephiroth said with what she felt in her heart, which is that he was the true Cloud. But she was the only one who had faith, who had any faith, and that's why they found Cloud. And then when they found Cloud, they all just thought he was a goner, you know, because he fell in the live stream. And she pretty much died saving Cloud. Had Cloud not heard her cries and pulled her into his mind, she would be dead, because you know with the weapons attack, she never, just like, what it reminds me of is a really wonderful parallel between her and Zack, because Zack, he was in the exact same state when he was with Zack, and Zack never knew if his mind would wake up or not, but he refused to leave him, and he died saving his life. And it's the same with Tifa, but because of their promise, you know, Cloud hears her cries, and then what I love about it, just another side note, is it was his one sealed up secret wish, but he knew the only way to save Tifa was to repair himself.
Yep.
And so he risked the thing he was scared the most, which was Tifa's rejection, because he would have rather been rejected and saved her life than let her die. This is so great. I love the story. I mean, it's such a great reveal.
Oh, I know.
My brother hasn't played the game in 20 years. He still talks about that scene. I mean, he's not a shipper or anything. He's just like, it's a great fucking reveal.
For sure. Yeah. But, like, you know, it's like the wrong thing they always run to is, well, all she could think about was Cloud, so clearly she has no other interest beyond that. And it's just like, you know, literally the moment when she leaves the party and they go back to the Highwind, the first line is Barrett saying, what are we gonna do now? None of them knew what to do.
Exactly.
They were all directionless. They all had no clue, and then eventually the only thing that gave them a sense of direction after that was Cat Sheet. It was Cat Sheet saying, oh, I overheard Shinra talking about this plan, kind of thing. You know, so like, yeah, I mean, so those are all the misconceptions that have annoyed me the most. But yeah, I've talked a lot. I'm sorry, so I'll let you go ahead with any that you have that we want to get to, and it sounds like there's one that the chat wants to get to, so we can go off on that. Okay.
Yeah, real quick, I'll say there's also one misconception where they say that she has no arc of her own. Tifa has an arc. It's just so entrenched in Cloud's arc because she's the love interest that, I mean, like, that's the reason. Like, their whole lives are intertwined. They grew up together. All this stuff that Cloud has been doing for, you know what I'm saying? Like, but and she lived 7 years without the man. So she obviously ain't, you know, she because a lot of people like to say she's codependent on Cloud and all this nonsense. Like, so codependent, she lived 7 years on her own. Okay, whatever. And then
to the extent that she's codependent, he is equally codependent.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that. We'll get to Cloud.
It's a very healthy depiction of a relationship where the two have equal dependence on one another, right?
Exactly.
But even if, you know, for those who will still be saying, no, she's not the real love interest, for those who say that, I will say, like, even if you put that aside, you know, their story arcs are intertwined because they're the only characters in this game who grew up together. There's no one else came from Wutai. No one else knows them. No one else came from Cosmo Canyon. These are the only two where they have the same home growing up. So naturally, they're gonna have intertwined.
They have they have lived next door to each other their entire lives. Yeah, their stories are intertwined. Yeah, you can even forget the romance part. Their stories are obviously going to be intertwined.
Right.
But sure. And then the last thing I'll say is, but I will say one thing that might help. And that's why, because I noticed they spent a lot of time on Zangan, her background with Zangan in Trace of Two Paths. I think, and he was actually supposed to make an appearance in Remake, but it got cut due to time. I really think whether it's a DLC or something like that, they need to have an arc almost kind of akin to Yuffie's, where if you go, I think you have to go back to Wutai, and you had that big tournament thing where you eventually face her father. I don't think it's going to be like that, but I could see some side thing where she runs into Zangan and he wants to have like a teacher student, that classic teacher student battle where the student surpasses the master.
Which actually is what happens in Final Fantasy VI. It's just a scripted scene.
Mm-hmm.
So when Sabin meets Duncan, his old master, how you learn the final Blitz ability for him is you go find Sabin again. Yeah. And I have a lot to say on this because I actually wrote a page on it once, like an editorial article on why I think Tifa needs that kind of backstory. So yeah, I mean, 100% agree with you there. I think that would be a phenomenal addition to the game. I would love to see them explore more the Zangan aspect of her backstory,
and it's the one part of her story that doesn't involve Cloud at all. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it really would feel more like I think that would help this perception that she doesn't have her own arc, because she has her own arc. We just don't see it. We can read about it, but we don't see it really. I think that would be a nice tie-in to say Tifa, and then get into the details about how Tifa became the great fighter that she is. Because Tifa, what's great about Tifa especially is she's just an ordinary girl. She has no enhancements. She's not a Cetra. Nothing wrong with being a Cetra. I'm just saying there's nothing unique about her. She's just a country girl who willed herself into greatness,
Yeah.
Through just
and
sheer
none
willpower.
of the others are like that.
Mm-hmm. Not even Cloud, because even though he was just a country boy, now he's this super Mako enhanced dude, so even his power, it makes, comes from somewhere. But even though he was, I will say this, and before Crisis they do say he was naturally good with a sword, but I mean, and he did kill Sephiroth when he was just pretty much a teenager too. But honestly, I always saw that as just pure hubris on Sephiroth's part. There's no reason he should have lost that day. But he was just thinking like anybody would, like, this 16-year-old kid is gonna beat me, and that's what it took about this. Hubris always gets Sephiroth. But anyway,
right.
Yeah, so I think that would be nice. Let me catch up on you say what you wanted to say, and then I'm gonna catch up on the comments because you mentioned that they said something.
The only thing I wanted to say was that Final Fantasy VI is my second favorite, or favorite. I go back and forth on it, and I always love the monk characters the most. And Sabin, you look at Sabin, he's my favorite character in that game, and he is this really buff, muscular guy. Looks like Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
This super strong guy, and you can see him using it to, suplex trains, right? And the very next game, they have the monk character who is not at all like that. She looks like just a regular normal girl who has these amazing skills because she trained herself, because she was so committed to it and so willing to do that. And, I really love how they completely subverted the trope of the monk characters for that. That's one of my favorite things.
And Ultimania goes into a lot of detail about this, because what we were talking about is character misconceptions. You look at Tifa, and I think this is where, because another misconception is she's this bullying bitch who, I think a lot of her detractors think that she just got Cloud, which is part of where this big tits thing comes from. She just got Cloud because in a way, when they say that, because I'm not finishing a sentence, sorry, I do that. In a way, they're really projecting on the Cloud when they accuse the fans of just liking her for tits. What a lot of them are really saying is they think Tifa only got Cloud because she's like this bombshell, not realizing that every time he headcanons this girl in the game, it's 8-year-old Tifa. You know what I mean? Like, he's been in love with her. When he almost fell off that mountain and almost died, that was 8-year-old Tifa he was chasing up that mountain, not 21-year-old. The Tifa we know, he's only known almost as long as we have. He only just reunited with her. You see what I'm saying? So his feelings for Tifa, while I'm sure he enjoys how she looks, trust me, is not about that. And then, so
I feel like this this Tifa was a bully narrative is one that really comes from the shipping war
Yes.
and like has absolutely zero basis in the game whatsoever. Because I have never heard any other sector of the fan base really say that about her.
No, and notice Cloud never, even in the live stream saying when she apologizes about what happened during the Mount Evil stuff, Cloud says it wasn't your fault. He has never blamed her once for the stuff that happened. Okay, and she has always been every description of them, you're like when they first meet, even after they're together. First thing you see is say is she is his childhood friend. She has always been a part of her description is always both of them in any game, even spinoffs. They are childhood friends. If they're childhood friends, that means they're friends. Okay. Right. Now they're later lovers, of course, but the point being, he never saw her as his enemy or his bully or any of that. Yeah. Not once. So right. He thought he did think she hated him. He did think she hated him after the Mount Evil incident, but in reality she never did, and she never suggested that she did. That's why she came out to the water tower. I mean, hard to hate somebody if you're going out on a date with them in the middle of the night. So anyway, sorry, I get very worked up about that. Yeah, she is not a bully at all. And what I was going to say is that the Ultimania says that while people, which is what's so funny because this fandom fell for it, is like, while not the fandom as a whole, but Tifa haters, it says while Tifa looks like one thing on the surface, she in actuality are all these different, all the great qualities we know about her. So they basically say a lot of people will judge her based on appearance, but in reality she is much more than her beauty. Yeah.
Right. So, anyway. But to those who will disagree that she is the love interest, not going to rehash that.
Yeah, you ain't gonna worry about anybody on this stream doing.
Oh yeah, none of us. But to those who disagree with that, I would say, yeah, and you're still wrong. She's still not a bully. Like like the only thing that I've really seen them point out is that one scene in Advent Children where Cloud is really depressed, and Tifa responds to him in a way that doesn't show a huge amount of empathy.
She loses her temper a little bit, and who the hell wouldn't? Their fucking kids are kidnapped by Sephiroth clones. Exactly. And Cloud is running around feeling sorry for himself.
Yeah, and I think it is like somewhat maybe a little bit fair. Mm-hmm. Because Tifa is a very motherly, empathic character in every other aspect. So I think it is a somewhat fair response to say, like, oh, this seems a little weird. This seems a little outside of a character to behave like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, it was an extreme circumstance, and Cloud's just sitting around in a bedroom while the kids are kidnapped. Like, she's like, go save our kids.
Like, I'd say to people like that, you have to put yourselves in the shoes of someone in that situation where a friend of yours is clearly down on their luck. They're clearly like super depressed. In this case, Cloud thought he was about to die. Like when you have to put yourselves in the shoes of someone like that, where the whole world is on their shoulders. But the whole world is on your shoulders as well.
Yeah, because Tifa's gone through almost just as much as Cloud has. I mean, she didn't get tortured for 4 years, but she's gone through a lot.
As much as they are.
Yeah.
And in a situation like that, they're both kind of stuck. They're both really out of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I do think it is fair to say it's outside of what she'd normally do. But when you consider the circumstances, no, I think it's a very realistic and human response to a situation like that.
Absolutely.
Like it's something that is like people say, oh, like you were saying earlier about Aerith having flaws. Yeah, and Tifa has flaws too because she's human.
That is one thing. People are always like, you never say anything about Tifa's flaws. Well, for one, Tifa's flaws are a lot more subtle, and they are really just like Cloud's flaws, Aerith's flaws, Bear's flaws. They're a lot more pronounced in their characters. Tifa's are very subtle, and so like but I spent so much time defending her to idiots, frankly, about who she actually is, that when do I get around to say a criticism about her? You know what I'm saying? Like, all I'm doing is trying to unwind the crazy of the stuff that people think about her. But anyway, let me catch up on the comments.
I'm sorry. I'm glad someone called me out on that in the comment where I think I described, like, oh, if you were putting yourselves in the shoes. Like that. I mean, the same thing very much applies to a romantic partner, and I probably should have used those terms.
Well, I think the way I took it though is because you were saying people who. Well, obviously, the people who think this about them don't think of them as in a relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The people who think Tifa's been bullying him all his life, they don't think they're in a relationship. So I think that's kind of where I got it from.
I'm used to describing them in like this very political way, where I try not to say that they're a couple, even though I kind of think they're a couple. So I'm glad you called me out on that. But anyway, So the whole like quote unquote bully narrative, it only really seems to come from that scene. And in that scene, they have a very human moment, a human reaction to one another's behavior. And so I just think it's just such a bullshit criticism. Mm-hmm. And it only really seems to come from the LTD people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they need to justify their minds. Yeah.
They're stretching.
Yes, they need to because they have to justify in their minds why Tifa doesn't deserve Cloud. I mean, that's what it comes down to. She's a bully. She's useless. She's this. She's that. Yeah. So it just shows their insecurity, if you ask me. But anyway,
to me, my appeal to those people would be to say, like, I've heard a lot of people describe the Clarith interpretation in very good terms. I've heard really compelling arguments for it. I don't agree with them, but I've heard people talk about it in terms that really make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And if you described your ship in this positive way and you made positive arguments for your ship, you would have so many more people being much more open to it.
I think so.
It just seems like a huge portion of you are not focused on that and are entirely focused on, well, I ship Cloud and Aerith because I hate Cloud and Tifa.
Yeah, well, and it's not just Tifa, it's Zack too. I mean, what is the reason to hate Zack other than this LTD nonsense? I mean, honestly, I mean, you can not care, because you may not be for the happy-go-lucky type of character. Okay, that's fine, but to hate Zack, there's only one reason for that. Anyway, I really gotta catch up on these comments. I think Tifa want to what Hojo did to Cloud. What? It finds out that he escaped last year. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about there. And let's be honest, Claudia has the best rack in the compilation. Bobby. Roland Floor also said, to be honest, Techno went off on that Tifa article. I cried.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that because I'm so proud of it.
And then Tifa may be pixels, but her predominantly male fans are not. I'm sorry, female fans are not. So it's absolutely right to call out Tifa as misogynist. Absolutely.
Yeah, because straight male fans like me who would call Tifa my favorite character, with the exception, most of the people, because I was around in the community when she did have a much larger straight male fan base than she does now, because there were fewer options back then.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were very motivated by, the sexual attraction of it. And I'm not going to hate on them too much. 2008 was a very different time.
Yeah.
But even back then, none of those people would say Tifa's my favorite character. And they wouldn't say that much, positive about her. They would just say, oh, she was really hot, and then they'd move on to gushing over how much they really love Cloud and Sephiroth, who were their real favorites.
Yeah.
The straight male who is solely motivated by that isn't that interested in the character and wouldn't rate them that high.
No.
So her fan base are gonna predominantly be, a female fan base who, it really resonates with them because they really relate to how human she is and how really well defined and well-written character she is. And, you know, I think no one has put it better than Britt Baron has on that, but we've talked so much about this character.
I know, we have gone on it. I love Tifa to death, but we got to do Cloud, and then we got to go, because we're approaching 2 hours for sure. So I always say, I told them before, we'll do an hour, so I always say that to my guests, and it never works out. You know, it's always at least 2 hours. And then, let's see, Tifa and Aerith also connect, losing both of their parents too soon. So yeah, that's nice. I think his mind is going to be more expanded in the remake. I agree. Every scene is going to get, you know, the live stream scene is going to be much larger. That arc of Medill to the live stream scene. I'm hoping they actually re-add Cloud having that heart attack. Well, he stops breathing. I wouldn't say heart attack. He stops breathing, and I believe Tifa has to revive him. It's a deleted scene.
Well, do you know what I'm really interested for that is, you know, there's a bit of like, you know, questionably canon information to that was added by the book Maiden, where the Maiden interpretation of it was that they fell into the live stream
and Aerith sent her into Cloud's mind. I don't think that's going to be the case, because only because if they keep it relatively true to the original, obviously we know they're going to expand greatly stuff, but Cloud ties in. Cloud himself explains that he heard Tifa's cries, and he said, I promise to always be there for you if you were in trouble. So it's kind of hard to say, you know, it's kind of hard to tie the promise in when if in reality a third party is the one that was involved in you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
but you know, I'm really interested to see if they decide to canonize that or if they decide to completely discard it. But you know, I'm curious to see what happens there.
Yeah.
Like, but I think the mind will be expanded, but I also think everything that it was in the original will be expanded in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's definitely high up on my list, but yeah, I do think it will be expanded some way. I think the order of events might change.
Well, Nomura said that. Yeah, that some stuff might change. Mm-hmm.
We'll see, but yeah, I mean, that was such an iconic moment in the original that they're not gonna. You know,
well, it's the climax of the. I mean, the developers themselves said it's the climax of the game. Nomura and Katase said it was their favorite scene. So I mean, and since it's the same developers making it, I don't see them cutting it. and they've already foreshadowed the live stream several times just in Midgar alone. So yeah, it's staying. Sorry to people who think Aerith and Zack are gonna fix his mind this time, but what people fail to realize is, what changes, what fixes Cloud is not remembering what happened in Nibelheim. What fixes him is confessing to Tifa, and then once he accepts his true self and his true journey, then that's why you have the big Nibelheim reveal at the end. So because they start with Nibelheim, they end with Nibelheim, but all the stuff in between is about Cloud and Tifa. Anyway,
I'm going to step away for 1 second while you answer the rest of the comments. Be right back.
Yeah, sure. I think Tifa was a bully. Tifa was a bully. It's top of my most hated misconception. Yeah, it's so stupid. Hey, Fried Green. Yep, 2 for me. Tifa's a bully, and Tifa is manipulating Cloud. Manipulating PTSD Cloud and AC. These people are insane. Manipulating Cloud AC. Yeah, I know, that's a new one. Tifa haters really made this hypothesis. Tifa manipulated Cloud to save Marlene and Denzel in Forgotten City. Yeah, she manipulated him into saving their children. Yeah, that's how I would put it. I'll tell you, these people are psychotic. Seriously. I mean, I'm sorry. I just have to say it. That is absolutely psychotic. I'd probably have more respect for people. They just said, I don't like Tifa. Exactly. Just say you don't like her. Just say you want Cloud to be with Aerith, and you're mad that Tifa ends up getting her. I mean, that's just what it is. Obviously, we're not stupid. Yeah, I would have a lot more respect for people if they just simply said, I don't like Tifa, and told the truth about it, rather than making up ridiculous reasons not to. Rather than make up outrageous headcanons and try to pass them off as fact. Exactly. And then even in the main theme, canonically, Cloud learning to play it from listening to Tifa playing it from her sheet music. Yeah. The stories are intertwined from the start to
is in the original, that's Cloud's only theme.
Exactly. So
They
Um,
hadn't written the vocal track yet. That didn't exist yet. So
yeah.
in the original, that is Cloud's theme.
And again, he only knows it because of Tifa.
Yep.
Yeah, and then oh man. Oh, anyway. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, but Cloud was overdue for some tough love. He really was. So, I disagree. Cloud defeated Sephiroth at 16 without special enhancements. The Genova cells hindered him, allowed him to get control instead of aided him. What? He like Tifa is indeed a country boy. Yeah, but no, I do agree there. Yeah, no, I totally agree there. But what
I
I'm
think
saying
that's a
is,
fair interpretation. Yeah.
yeah, I up until 16, yeah, he didn't have any enhancements. I said that. I just said I also think that a lot of it had to do with Sephiroth's hubris, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's a fair
Because there is no
interpretation.
reason that Sephiroth should have died that day. Especially
Yeah.
in Crisis Core Reunion. I mean, it's ridiculous. He only yeets him into the live stream because this idiot wouldn't let the sword go.
Yep.
I was like, let the sword go, Sephiroth. Anyway, that's why you have to find his own country boy self again before he can defeat Sephiroth again. That might be something worth exploring. We're about to talk about Cloud now, so
Yep.
so
Yeah, great segue.
yeah, we'll talk about Cloud and then we'll end on that because I'm hungry and actually before we talk about Cloud, I'm gonna grab something to drink. So give me just a second here.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, so I think I'll introduce the topic of Cloud then. So Cloud is, you know, like, as a character, is kind of meant to have misconceptions around him because he subverts tropes in such a way that they almost mislead you as to what his character is like at the very beginning. So, he introduces himself as this really cocky, hardened battle veteran. Like, for those like me who our favorite games were Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid 1, our favorite PS1 games, like, they almost introduce him as Solid Snake. Like, they introduce him as kind of a Solid Snake character.
Alrighty, I am back.
Hey,
I'll actually let you. So I'm curious what you think the misconceptions about Cloud are.
Yeah, well, I was just setting it up, and I was saying, like, they introduce Cloud almost like a Solid Snake. Like, that's kind of what they want you to believe. But in reality, he's not like that at all. And you start to learn that as the game goes on, and that's why we love Cloud so much, is because he has all this depth and because it's what makes him really interesting. Like, there is to an extent a portion of his fan base who love the fact that he is, in a way, he's kind of a male fantasy character. He's this
In a way,
badass guy who, and all the girls love him. Like, so there is that aspect of him,
Yeah.
right? But what makes him so good and so, like, what gives him depth beyond that is that you quickly learn how bullshit that was, and how he was really just bullshitting his way through the whole thing. And yeah, so I feel like I can somewhat sympathize with a lot of the misconceptions where people say things like, oh, he's emo, oh, he's XYZ, oh, he's like I can somewhat sympathize with people who have those who have those misconceptions of him, because the developers almost wanted you to think that about him.
yeah.
To an extent. But like, really the reason why this character has been so well received and why he's gotten such a good reaction is just that every time you go back and you replay the game, you start to see all the cracks in the surface of how he was just kind of bullshitting it, and how it kind of came from nowhere. And that's what people really love about this character. So ultimately, like, yeah, I mean ultimately, I'm basically setting it up by saying, like, I get where the misconceptions come from, and those are probably the low-hanging fruit ones. But you know, like if you really explore this character to and even a moderate extent, like, you know, when I was writing his page was just as difficult to write as Tifa, because I had the exact same reaction to it. It was exactly the same. Like, I have so much to say in such a short amount of space. But yeah, so really the main ones I have are all the low-hanging fruit ones. So I don't know if you have any of the, like, you know, the spicier misconceptions from the community.
Ooh, this is shaky. This is. I'm trying to think what to say and what not to say.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
One major thing, because there is a segment of the community that is wanting to just erase. It's like all about Tifa erasure, and I bring this up with Clouds to say this.
Okay.
Cloud was not, to me, and maybe you'll have a different opinion. To me, Cloud's goal was never to be a hero. Cloud was not. Cloud didn't wake up like Zack one day and was like, "Oh, I'm gonna join the army because I want to be a great war hero." He is only, as the live stream shows, he is only motivated to do that after he feels he's failed Tifa. And so he wants to, the reason he becomes interested in Sephiroth, because the live stream shows he doesn't really show interest in Sephiroth until after that happens.
Didn't even know who Sephiroth was.
Exactly. It said, and then I heard about Sephiroth, and it goes from there.
Yeah.
And he wanted to impress the town, but the reason he wanted to impress the town is because he says, again, in the same scene, if everybody respects me, even Tifa will notice. Okay, the whole point is to get Tifa's attention. Cloud basically saved the world trying to get laid. Okay, I mean, that's it. Just like accident. It was just like a happy accident. Okay,
the hell of a, you know, method.
I know. Cloud is such a, like, Cloud is like a, and this is another thing. Cloud is like a really big romantic too. He does these huge gestures. He doesn't just ask the girl out. Like, just ask her out. Instead, he's like, I'm gonna go join the army and possibly die just to get your attention. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, imagine if, you know, you had a high school crush and, you know, you could never muster up the courage to talk to her. So you decide, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to join the army. I'm going to reach the rank of general. And I'm going to be personally responsible for defeating Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'll approach her. It's like, what? Tifa could not care less about soldiers. I mean, because when she's faced with Sephiroth and Zack, she's faced with Sephiroth, the greatest war hero known all over the world, and she has no reaction to seeing him. She's like, is Cloud here? She didn't care about that.
Yeah, she's like, I'll take him on a tour around the mountain. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
but I
like,
yeah.
She takes the picture with him, and it's not even like, you know, she doesn't like take a selfie. Someone else snaps the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, you know, she's basically not as impressed by it as Cloud would kind of expect, until, like, you know, she's more just curious than anything else.
Yeah.
She's more like, oh, why does he want that? Why is he saying that? Like, it's curiosity more than anything else that like intrigues her.
Mm-hmm. But what I'm getting at is Cloud, just like Tifa, Cloud is just a country boy at heart. You know, this is not all there's to his story, but it really is just a coming of age, girl next door, you know, love story type deal, kind of going on with him. It's simple beginnings, you know, humble is simple beginnings, and then life happens and shit gets real. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So I like, that bothers me.
Say, because, like, you know, to those, and it doesn't sound like there's that many of them, but to those listening who might happen to be more of the cleric persuasion, I would say, like, you know, even if you think that Cloud ended up with Aerith, like, come on, this is long before she was in the picture.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this one is an open shot case. this is what his original motivation was. Open shut case.
What you said before really stuck to me, because you're right. Because like when I first listened to Phantom, I had no issue with people wanting to prefer Clarith over Cloud. I still don't really, you know what I'm saying? But I would have more respect for it if people would simply tell the truth. It's obvious Cloud was crushing on Tifa the entire girl. You can believe that he then met Aerith and fell in love with her. That's fine, whatever you want to believe. Right. But don't just flat out deny the story as it is because it doesn't suit you. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's following a girl up a mountain at 9 and taking the blame for it all over town for her almost dying because they're not in love with her. Now, yeah, he's 9. It's puppy love at that point, obviously, but just saying.
This is a good segue into another misconception that a lot of people have about Cloud. And that is you see, Cloud, Squall, and Lightning are all copy-pastes of one another. And they all basically have the exact same story, the exact same
motivation. Crazy. Yeah, that's
crazy. It is, right? Because, Lightning didn't get involved in the army because she had a crush on someone. And Lightning actually made it. Actually made it in the army. Same with Squall. Squall did not have the same motivation Cloud did. Squall was not, he didn't meet Renoa until much later. Squall, he got involved in the army because I don't actually remember the reason.
Basically, he was an orphan, and then the school basically took him in, and the whole point of the school is to turn children into soldiers, which, that'd be an interesting thing to talk about.
Squall did not have a lot of choice there.
No.
But this is something that clearly is a clear distinction between those characters, and I can understand the parallels in a way, in that they're both military, or the three of them, they're military veterans that end up, in Lightning's case and Cloud's case, they both end up becoming mercenaries and kind of sticking out from the military after that. But I think that's more of an allusion to Cloud than anything else, because 13 starts out with a freaking train.
Yeah, it definitely, people have a little bit more of a case when it comes to Cloud and Lightning, because she clearly is modeled off of Cloud,
it's an allusion to FF7.
They were trying, I see it as them trying to kind of recreate the magic, of 7, but
which, by the way, isn't that new of a thing for Final Fantasy to do, because Final Fantasy 7, there's a lot of cues that took from Final Fantasy 6.
And there's a lot in Final Fantasy 8 that crazy alien lady from outer space who, crashes on Earth and she has to be entombed. And then
they've always done this.
It was pretty blatant.
They've done that since the second game. Since Final Fantasy 2. Ever since then, there've been all these, games that have come out where they're very we're going to have the Star Wars thing where it's the Empire versus the Rebellion. And that came from Final Fantasy 2. They've always done that. So this whole idea of see, all these characters are just a copy-paste of Cloud and they had no originality to them. And that's all they did. No. There are very big differences if you look beneath the surface. And that's basically the theme of today's podcast.
I don't know if I'm going backwards or not.
As soon as you look beneath the surface of any of these, you will see there's so much that you're missing. And a lot of these, dismissals of characters that they didn't like, that didn't resonate with them, if a character doesn't resonate with you, there's nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do to stop you. If you didn't, if you don't fuck with Tifa, if that's not your favorite character, or that's not even a character you like, there's nothing I can say against that. Except,
people are allowed to like what they like.
That you didn't like. Yeah, except that I'm sorry you didn't like this character.
Yeah.
I really did, but I'm sorry you didn't. But when they take that to this level of, because I'm dismissing them, I'm going to pretend they absolutely have nothing going for them. That's when you start to lose us a little. And you start to just be ridiculous.
Because it's one thing not to like a character, it's another thing to just ignore their story.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and that bothers me because, like, you know, I get people that say, and I would say they're right. Final Fantasy VII is not a love story. You know, it's not. It's not. That is true. It is not a love story. But the heart of Cloud's story does start with love of a girl. You know what I mean? Like that's undeniable.
Exactly.
His hero's journey is wrapped up in a love story. That is true.
Right. It's not a love story to the extent that Final Fantasy VIII or 9 was.
No.
Or even, I would even say 10 is more of a love story than 7, right?
Yeah.
But there is still a love story involved there.
Yeah.
You know, like Star Wars is not a love story between Han Solo and Princess Leia. But there's still a love story involved there.
And there's a love story involved. And by the way, there's a love story involved in Claritas. I would say the actual love story being told is that she, what the devs have said, which is she sees her first love in Cloud. And that's, you know, like she's, I wouldn't say trying to relive, like she's, I wouldn't say she's literally trying to replace Zack with Cloud or something, but that is their connection, is that she sees her first love in Cloud, and the story goes from there. So exactly. Though again, in my opinion, one is mutual and one is one-sided. The point is, both of them there is a love story being told both ways. Even though I would say one is one-sided. You know what I mean? But Cloud has a lot of romance. I mean, again, why make the mini date thing at all? Where the hell am I going? I'm lost. Sorry, I sit here trying to figure out how to get the hell out of here. Like, why make the LTD mini game in the first place? Like, they're tying Cloud to a love story. You know what I mean? Like, that's the point.
So going back to that, two things I'll say there. First of all, like, yes, like, you know, the Aerith love story is absolutely in there, but, you know, Aiko loved Zidane in Final Fantasy 9. Like,
Quista's love Squall.
Yeah, you know, like, it doesn't mean they ended up together, but it happened, right? That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say, and I think this is another important underlying point about every character in FF7, is if you look at it, like, you know, and this is a theme they carried on from FF6, but every character's arc involves how they dealt with loss and how they dealt with a big tragedy in their life. Yeah. You know, so in Cloud's case, in Cloud and Tifa's case, their loss was the same one. It was the Nibelheim one. That was where theirs came from. Barrett's, it came from Mount Coral. Red 13, you know, that the whole thing of Cosmo Canyon kind of speaks for itself there. Yuffie, it was Wutai. Vincent, it was what happened with Sephiroth, who he thought he was responsible for bringing into this world. Turns out he wasn't. Sid with, you know, losing the space mission.
And if you think about it, most of these involve a love story. Now, Nanaki's is not told. But Vincent, what happened? He fell in love with a girl, and then she turned out to be a psycho, frankly. My opinion. But his whole thing, his whole arc is about unrequited love, and that's how he ended up in the state he is in. And then Sid, you know, he obviously is in love with Shara, but then he also blames her for for his dreams not being fulfilled. So Barrett lost his wife. Like, that's a love story involved. He lost the love of his life because of Shimura. Yeah, a lot of them have to do with love.
Yeah, except for Red 13, who
Red 13 and Kate Sith. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Kashi as well. Yeah. Forgot about that. And Yuffie, because she's too young.
Yeah, she's even though they still kind of add a component there. Now that I highly doubt that's going to be a remake, because a 16-year-old going out with a 21-year-old is not going to fly. I don't think in 2023. But it may. I don't know, but they'd have to do it right. They would have to do it right.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, Persona managed to include it, and a lot of people just forget about that.
I never played Persona, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, But yeah, I mean, I imagine they won't include that joke in. You know, there's another joke in that they probably shouldn't include today, which was, you know, the one where, like, you know, if you go on the date with Barrett and then you end up in the theater square, then just outside that, the guy says, "Congratulations, you're our 100th couple of the day." "Oh wait, no, you're not. Sorry." Like, nah, they can't say that.
And Barrett sure as hell ain't about to accuse Cloud of trying to date his 4-year-old daughter. That's gonna make make having children look really awkward. So
yeah, but with that said, you know, like, you know, the war market scene was super problematic in the original.
Ooh, yeah, you're telling me.
It was really bad,
Yeah.
and they did a phenomenal job with it. Like how they managed to turn that one around. Like,
because boy, oh boy, I mean, Cloud goes unconscious and then wakes up and a man is on top of him. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, I'm just flat out lost. I don't know where the hell I'm supposed to be going here. Oh, wait, hold on. No, never mind. Okay, I'm done playing this anymore.
follow the blue icon.
Yeah, I am, but it's not. I'm probably just exhausted. I platinum this game twice. I can't believe I'm lost.
Oh, good.
That is so funny. But yeah, so that bothers me. I guess on a shipping level, that bothers me because, like, again, it's just a Tifa erasure. Like, another thing though is, yeah, I hate that this whole thing. Cloud is emo. No, Cloud is not emo. Yeah, he's not a Squall type character. Okay,
he's not. He's absolutely not a Squall type character. Like, you know, I think I understand where that one comes from, though.
Yeah, I get it, but it's still annoying. Yeah.
It comes from basically every depiction of Cloud after FF7 OG, right? You know, somewhat to an extent in Advent Children, but in Advent Children, he has very good reason behind it.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was the natural guilt of everything that happened in FF7 original caught up to him, plus the
and
whole...
it was dying, and his son was dying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so basically, it's not that it's not a part of his character, it's just that it's a natural, you know, a human response to everything he's been through.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Now, when it comes to stuff like in Kingdom Hearts, for instance, in which he's portrayed with Vincent's outfit for some reason, and is portrayed like an emo.
Yeah.
That is where I understand people getting that impression of him from. But to which I'll say, you know, Cloud, like, Kingdom Hearts isn't very, like, it, with one exception, Kingdom Hearts isn't very true to the original characters.
No.
The one exception is Auron, and that's because you can't possibly portray Auron as anything less than the best character in FF10. He's, like, my second favorite character in this series. Love Auron. There's no way to possibly mess that character up.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, you know, so I understand where that comes from. It's just not correct.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you make a good point with that. You definitely make a good point with that. Which is also why, you know, God bless him. I love Steve Burton. I mean, no shade by this, but I think also, I don't know whether it was directing or whatever was going on, but there's a way that he portrayed Cloud that also, you know, just kind of this monotoned, you know, doesn't really get excited except in small circumstances, like when he saw Tifa injured or when Sephiroth was trying to attack Tifa in Kingdom Hearts. Otherwise, he's just very Cloud and the others is very he's like one almost one noted. I don't really know a good way to say it.
No,
but you see what I'm saying?
I agree with
whereas
that. Yeah.
That's why you know, and again, no shade to the original voice actors. But that's why I feel like Cody Christian is the perfect Cloud because I'm sure you played Reunion, right, at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. It really is incredible. I mean, you could have told me that was a different person. I would have believed you. You know what I mean? Like,
you know, it's amazing how well the voice cast did.
Yes. I don't know who was behind casting these characters, but they nailed it. Like,
I think in the case of Steve Burton, like, you know, and Cody Christian, it's interesting because they're both super different in their portrayal, and yet still you could realistically show me scenes of Steve Burton's alongside Cody Christian's, and if you weren't paying a huge amount of attention, you would believe it was almost the same person. Like, you know,
I think I do get what you mean by that.
yeah, and I would say the same with Brianna White. Really, the only one that doesn't apply to is Britt Baron.
Yeah,
And
because
yeah,
you know, and again, I'm
and
really not
Britt
trying to say
Baron,
anything. I just think it was bad casting when it came to Tifa because she is so high, you know, just like that. It's almost like they just gave her kind of an airheadish type thing. I mean, again, I'm sorry, Richard Lee Cook. I love you. I loved you and Psych. I got nothing against you. I think it was miscast entirely.
yeah, no,
And I'm not saying she normally sounds like an air. I'm just saying I feel like that's the direction they were just like, oh, you know, Tifa's a girl, she's pretty, and give her a high pitched voice. You know, I think that's how I took it.
I took it more as like, you know, they leaned in heavily on the very empathic, motherly aspect of Tifa's personality, and to that, like, I can somewhat see.
Yeah, that's not a bad point. That's not a bad point.
Yeah,
but it seemed like all the women just had high pitched voices and having children. It just felt like, you know. Whereas I feel like, Britt Baron gives a young but mature sound to Tifa.
Exactly, and Britt Baron, if you listen to her in anything else, like, you know, you watch her in Glow, for example, she's just she's not really putting on a unique voice for Tifa. It's just the way she's delivering all the lines is just like, it's such, I don't know how she does it, but every single line stands out, even if it's the most
I can't think of a single bad line out of
she
any
has
of the main cast.
5 lines in Crisis Core Reunion, and all of them are just delivered perfectly. I don't know how you do that. But, like, you know, she's not even, like, putting on a unique voice for it. It's just her delivery just perfectly encapsulates the emotion. And because Tifa's someone who, like, she's someone who every single line of hers can be read 5 different ways. And Britt Baron just portrays that exactly, like, just perfectly. It's just incredible to me. Like, we don't deserve Britt Baron. We don't deserve John Eric Bentley. We don't deserve them at all. Like, we've been such a terrible fan base. Like, you know, having, like, chewing each other out over this LTD shit and, you know, shit posting all over the compilation. How much we hated it.
Did you see where?
And this is how we rewarded us. We don't deserve it.
Yeah, I hear you. But anyway, we need to be wrapping up.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yep. Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and
for sure.
Yeah, I'll have to get you back on because there's a lot of great topics we could go over, and we should also go. You know, like you seem to have a lot of interest in 10 and stuff like that. Maybe we should do. I would love to do a podcast on 8. I'd love to do a podcast on 10.
I would love to do those
9 too.
When I start rewriting those pages.
Yeah, like, that'd be great.
When it comes to that, I would love to talk about those. Unfortunately, my hands are really full with FF7 right now.
Yeah.
So I'll just, if you don't mind if I just use this end part of the podcast as my shameless plug.
Okay, sure.
For everything I've got going on. So right now, the big thing we are working on is we have the timeline page for the original FF7. The timeline page for all of the FF7 universe. Our current timeline page sucks. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't write it. It wasn't me. But our current one was not very good. We basically took it from the livestream.net and they didn't cite things properly. So we're redoing that. We have a translator who's hard at work on it and has every single Ultimania and is gonna, like, bit by bit get every single thing from that, and we're gonna put together a proper timeline page that I think you're already gonna love. So that's the main thing we're working on right now. We've also recently just redone the script page. That took me a long ass time to do. So all of FF7 Originals dialogue, you can see it in there, and the triggers for everything. And we've just we've done for the first time actually, we've created chapter pages for FF7, and the chapters are based on how the Ultimania divides the chapters up. So, you know, you'll find like a full walkthrough for the game in those chapter pages, but they also divide up how the story was. And so with all these three things ready, I will fully complete a 100% rewrite of Final Fantasy VII, all the story content. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm hoping to get that ready before 7 Rebirth. So that's the main thing we're focusing on right now, is getting all of that redone for that certain time. And yeah, so please stay tuned to that. And after FF7, the game I really want to do next is 10.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I love 10 so much.
oh, I love
Yeah,
10
that's
as
all
well.
sounds exciting. Sounds very exciting. Let me last say to the chat, Side Norna, Stitches is the perfect priest of FF7 canon. It was funny. And hi, no, I was talking, but yeah, I wanted to say hi. I appreciate everybody who joined, especially everybody who stuck around for the last 2 hours
Yeah.
and watched me get lost for 20 minutes in chapter 2. But
No, I appreciate the comments a lot of people had, because, there were times when you called me out and I kind of agreed with you. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you to Technobliterator of FF Wiki for joining me. This was a ton of fun. Like I said, we'll have them again. So,
Yeah,
happy hump day, everybody. It is Wednesday, right?
this Wednesday, you're right.
And I will see y'all later. I will be, what's coming up next for me is I'll be doing an author interview for an author who did a Final Fantasy 9 book. So I'll be recording that over the weekend. It may be live, it may not be. I guess it just depends on how our schedules go. But yeah, thanks, Meza. And she said thanks to Techno for being a good sport. All right.
Oh, appreciate it.
All right. See y'all later. Bye.